So we have an actor who turned governor and then won the presidency in 1980, and he steered America through a recession, a rivalry with the Soviet Union, and then, well, a late thaw in the Cold War. I'm Matt Haskell, I'm a high school history teacher, and we're going line by line, lyric by lyric through Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire. When Billy Joel sings Reagan, he's pointing to Ronald Reagan, who was elected in 1980 and then reelected in 1984. And his presidency framed the early 80s in economics and culture and Cold War strategy. Now, the economic story opened rather rough, then rebounded. We had an early recession and high inflation that collided with a new policy mix that was dubbed Reaganomics. You had the mix was tax cuts, deregulation, and a belief that private investment would expand growth. Then the Volcker Federal Reserve crushed inflation with high interest rates. Unemployment spiked and then fell as a long expansion took hold about mid-decade or so. Supporters saw renewed confidence and job growth. Critics pointed to, well, rising deficits and just overall economic inequality. At home, Reagan projected a small government message while wielding a very strong executive hand. He fired striking air traffic controllers in 1981, the PATCO dispute. He signaled a tougher stance towards unions, and he emphasized law and order. An assassination attempt on his life in March of 1981 nearly killed him, and his recovery boosted public sympathy and his stature. Abroad, he shifted from confrontation to negotiation. Early rhetoric labeled that he threw out there labeled the USSR as an evil empire, and he proposed the Strategic Defense Initiative (SDI), also known as Star Wars. U.S. defense budgets just shot through the roof. You end up with proxy conflicts that kind of were on the simmer. And then the script changed with Mikhail Gorbachev. You have summits in Geneva in 1985, and then again in Reykjavik in 1986, back in Washington in 87, and in Moscow in 88. And it moved from this kind of friction that existed into, well, towards breakthrough. It produced the INF Treaty in 1987 that removed an entire class of nuclear missiles. In 1987 at Berlin, he challenged Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, which was a line that later felt rather prophetic when the Berlin Wall opened in 1989. The asterisk in this narrative about Reagan is Iran-Contra, which was a secret operation that traded arms to Iran and then diverted the proceeds to Nicaraguan rebels, the Sandinistas, despite legal restrictions. The scandal surfaced in 1986. Investigations laid the blame with the administration's process and oversight. Reagan said he had not been fully informed of the diversion. He took responsibility for the failure, and he weathered the storm with diminished but surviving approval. There were some questions about his overall mental and cognitive health as a result. Why is his name, appearing at this point in the song? Well, it's because Reagan marks a shift in tone and policy from stagflation under Carter to renewed growth, from Cold War brinksmanship to arms control, from New Deal assumptions to a revived market-first system of politics. When you tie it back to the song, his surname, Reagan, compresses his landslide election wins, the tax cuts, and the deficits, his Berlin speech, and a handshake that signed away missiles. And the headlines, that all defined the 1980s as a decade, how they pivoted. The reason why it matters is, well, the Reagan years explain how message discipline, economic wagers, and summit diplomacy can reframe the era. They also show how achievements and controversies can run parallel inside just one presidency. If you enjoyed this episode, hang with me. We're getting close to the end of the song here. So we'll be, we had Reagan, and next up in this particular line, next we'll be coming up with Palestine. Thanks for watching.